Right then guys, we are going to start looking at the June 2022 paper, which I've got on my desktop. It's also on Classroom for you. What I've done though is I've taken the data extract and I've put it at the end of the presentation that's also on Classroom. So this is the data, just it's rotated around so you can read it a bit easier as we work through it. So I've got Access open and we are just going to do what we normally do. We're going to start a blank database. This one is June 2022. So I'm just going to create that. Get back to a blank screen, make that column a bit wider so you can see a bit easier. Basically now we're going to start looking at the first thing we've got to do is create our database structure. So for that we need to be looking here. So we want to be coming up with 4 tables. So remember there's always 3 easy ones. The 4th one is a little more difficult, but 3 should be enough to get you decent grades anyway. So if you're really struggling, go for the 3. You want to look for headings initially that have an ID or something like that that will tell you that's an identification for that table. So a reference, it's not called ID, but if you look, a reference is unique. So the reference is for the staff members in this case. So something to do with staff is going to be one of our tables. The second of our tables is going to be a performance grade. So that's the grade the staff member is performing at. And we've got a position ID. So that's the position that they hold within the company. So we've got at least 3 there. Now, if we look, we've got staff positions, grades, and position grades. Performance grade, sorry. So that's essentially telling us what the 4 are. The 4 tables, there's actually two different ways to do this one. The way that I prefer to do this one is with a staff table. So we've got our staff members in one table. We've got their position, so the role they have within the company, as a second table. But because the positions are doubled up, I would take that out. So I'll mix the staff and position together in the second big table, put the positions out separately, and then the grading I'm also going to have separately. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like now. I'm going to jump to the database. I'm going to create my first table in Design View, and I'm going to reference that data set that we just looked at. I've got it on a separate screen in front of me, so I'm just going to start typing them in. I'll start with the staff table. So for that one, we've got staff reference, we've got surname, we've got staff days per week. Sorry, keyboard's quite loud, I know, but not much I can do with that. Staff leaving date and telephone. Okay, so that'll be enough for my structure. However, I should also be putting my primary keys and data types in. So let's make that our primary key because it's unique. Surname can stay as short text. Staff days per week, so days is a number, so let's change that to just a regular number. The start date, clue is in the name there, so it's going to be a date or time. Leaving date, exactly the same. There's the one that's there to trick you, which is the telephone number, which would obviously leave as text because of the 0 at the start. I can now close this one. I do want to save, so I'm going to save that as TBL staff to make sure I get the naming convention marks. I'm going to go straight to the next one. I'm going to go quite quickly. You can pause this whenever you need to. This one's going to be the staff position table. So this one is going to have staff ref, which we had in the previous table. It's going to have their position ID, which we haven't used yet. We'll come back to that one now. We've got the position start date. So what date did they start that role in the company? Same for the end date. And then their performance grade ID. So that's how it's going to link to that table. Okay, so let's do our data types first. So position ID, let's just double check that that is a number. It is, so I can see they're all numbers, so I know I'm safe to put that data type as a number. I actually didn't check staff reference, did I? So staff reference is also a number. I will need to go and change that, which I'll do now before I forget. So that also needs to be a number. There we go. Yes, I want to save. Back here, so position ID is a number. Start date is obviously a number. Date. End date is also a date. And the performance grade ID, pretty sure it's a number. Let's just go and check. Performance grade ID. There we go. Only 1s, 2s, and 3s. So numbers. So I know I'm safe to make that one a number as well. Okay. Haven't done the primary key on this one just yet because it's slightly different. You may have spotted that it's a composite key instead. So a composite key, remember, is two fields together that make something unique. So I can take these two. I held shift as I clicked on the second one. I'll just do it again. Click on the first, hold shift, click on the second, and then I click primary key. I get two key icons there, and I've now created my composite key. So it's made up of two things to make it unique. Individually, they wouldn't be unique, because staff reference already exists in the staff table. Position ID will exist in the position table. If we combine them, so the combination of those two things makes sure that it's unique. If I close that, yes, I want to save. This one is going to be TBL, and this one is going to staff position. Oh, there we go. Click OK. And I've now got two of my 4 tables. The next one now is, they're both a lot smaller. So those are the two big ones doing the heavy lifting for the database. These ones are just going to be a tiny little bit of data held off to the side. So this one's going to be the position table. So this one's going to have position ID, which we just used in the previous table, and what position that relates to. So the position ID, remember, is a number. So it has to match data types and is also the primary key here. Position is text because it's just a set of words. And that's that table done. So we want to save that. So this one is going to be TBL position. And final, very quickly, the performance or the grade table. Okay, so this one's going to have the performance grade ID. And we just checked that, I believe, but it is a number. So this performance grade 1, 2, and 3. So let's change that to number. And the data that comes with that is the grade descriptor. So it's a description of what that performance grade is, which is going to be text. The performance grade ID is the primary key. And that's the final table done. So that's your 4 tables. I will go back over those now. So this is going to be TBL grade. There's our 4 tables. So the next step now is to turn those into tables that are linked together. So we're going to go to database tools. We're going to click relationships. We're going to add all 4, like so. I'm just going to move them around slightly, just so it's a little bit easier for you to see how they link. So we've got, if we think of this in sentences, so one staff member can have many positions in the company. Okay, so if we take that staff member there and we drag it to the staff reference there, we can enforce referential integrity, make sure it says one to many, and click create. I've obviously messed up my field names straight away. So let me just go and double check that. So that's probably in the staff position table. Yep, there we go, left it as text, and it should have been number. Let's try that again. Hopefully this one will work. Still says one to many, and we're all good. Then we've got these 2 floating tables over here that need to be attached to this one. Okay, so we just link them to their existing IDs here. So the position ID is going to link to position ID because one position can be held by many staff. So we enforce and create, and one grade can be held by many staff. So it means that basically multiple staff members can be graded the same. And create, there we go. So there's our 4 tables. That works perfectly for what we need. We've stopped any doubled up data. The composite key is the complex bit here. Ideally, to avoid that, you could have a grade table, a staff table, a position table with the staff in details, which would also have a composite key. and then the position off separately. So there are alternative ways to do this one, but this is the way that makes sense to me, and hopefully will make a bit of sense to you. I can now close my relationships and save them, and I can move to activity 2. So activity 2 is the data structures. This is where you do your validation. It's where you're looking for all the different types of validation they give you in the paper. They'll want to make sure that you've got the right data types, so text, number, and date, which we've already covered. They will want a presence check on the surname. So if we go to the staff table in Design View, so we've got to make sure this is basically not allowed to be left empty. I should change my field size. I'm being a bit lazy and I'm not bothering to do that. But in case you've forgotten, the validation rule here, so we go to validation rule at the bottom and we just type in is not null. So it's not blank. Going for top marks, so I'm going to put in a little error message that says, please enter a surname. Okay, that screenshot with that field highlighted will be enough to get you the mark for that one. The next one is the telephone number. So if we look, the telephone number needs an input mask. So it needs basically 5 characters, a space, and then 6 characters. So it's a really nice input mask, really simple. So because of the space, instead of 11 characters, it's going to be 12. It's not a validation rule, remember, it's in input mask here. So to force them to type in 5 numbers, first of all, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, press space, and then do another 6. And that will give you your input mask for telephone. So I can now save that table and close it. The next one is for the staff start date. Sorry, it's in the same table, I should have left that open. So in this table, we change the format for the start date. So we need to give it a format of short date, which we do in the drop-down list. So just choose short date there. And then it's got to be filled in, so you can't leave it blank. So you go to validation rule, nice and easy, is not null. And again, another error message in case they do leave it blank for top marks. Okay, so that's half of the validation done. We've got just a couple more bits to do. They're obviously the more complex ones. So the next one is on the same table. So it's going to be on the staff days per week, which is a number. So with numbers, generally speaking, remember, they're going to want you to do a more than or less than or possibly both. So we've set it to number already, which means we're halfway there. Then we're going to go to our validation rule. And if we look at the question, it says it must be between 2 and 5. So very easily between 2 and 5. Again, going for top marks, need a little error message. And that should be enough for that one. Make sure your data type matches, obviously. And then we've got one more that we can do, which is considered the higher mark one, where we use a drop-down list to make sure the performance grade is correct. So, right. If I just close this one and save and open up my staff position table for this one. Okay, so we've got the performance grade ID here. And what I can do is turn this into a drop-down list that will look at the other table. So a drop-down list is made using lookup wizard in the data type. So this is, remember, we have to break the relationship temporarily. So you just close this table, because this is what will happen in the exams. That's why I'm going through it the same way. Go to relationships, and it is this one here. I'm going to delete the relationship temporarily. I'm going to go back to my table. Try the same thing again. So basically, when you get the performance grade ID here, I don't want it to be able to be made up. I want it to be an existing piece of data from another table. So I hit lookup wizard. Sometimes we go with I will type in what I want if we want to customize the drop-down list. But because we want these values to come from an existing table, we're going to choose the top option. So we're going to click next. Which table is the data in? It's going to be in the grade table. So we click next. Is it the performance grade ID? Yes, it is, because that's the field name there. That needs to match. So that one matches that one. So I select that one and only that one. Click next. We haven't got to sort it. I haven't put any data into my database yet, but if you've put your data in, you will have a list of the grades, or the grade IDs in there. Click next. Leave the heading the same and finish. Say yes, and it would have made the relationship again for us. So we haven't lost any of our work there. And that is activity 2. At this point, you should then go ahead and start putting the data into your database. So I'm just going to pause the video a second while I do that, and then we'll look at the queries and report next. Right, okay, all the data should be in now. I'll just quickly run through my tables and show you. So there's the grade table, 3 different primary keys and 3 different descriptors. Same for position, except there's 5, so 5 different position IDs, 5 different jobs in the company. There's our staff details. That was the fiddly one to do with the dates. And then the staff position one, which to us just pretty much looks like gibberish, but it's a combination of the staff details. Now, this would probably work without the dates in there. As I was doing this, I realized we probably doubled up a little bit there. It's not going to hurt, though. You could quite happily get away if you came up with the idea of not having those 2 columns. This would still work because it links the 3 pieces of data together. So if I close all of those, so we're back at a nice blank screen, and we'll look at activity 3, which is queries and the report. So as we know, part A, the query, is very straightforward, the first one. So in this case, the question's asking us to create a query to display an alphabetically sorted list of positions that have at least 2 staff members in that position. It must show the name of the position and the number of staff members only. So we're going to go into create, and we're going to start our query design. Now we need to decide what tables we're going to need for this. So looking at the question, it's all to do with staffing and their position. So we are going to need the position table, just so we can get the primary key data. And we're going to need the staff position table, because that combines the staff and their positions together. Might also work if you threw the staff table in, but this is the bare minimum of what you need for this one. So the first thing we're going to do is take the position from the position table. So we need to know what job role they've got. Then we're going to create a new field, which is for the number of staff. So we need to know how many staff are in that position. Okay, so I'm going to call this one num staff. As long as it makes sense to you, it's absolutely fine. Now remember to force it to make the new field name. We put a colon after it. I appreciate that's probably very small on the screen. And then we've got to tell it what we want to count, because obviously that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be counting the number of staff. Now, when you want to count things, remember the rule that I've taught you is we use the ID number to count, because the ID number is the primary key. We always want to count the number of unique records in the table. So in this case, we want them to count position ID, which I've got to type exactly as I have in the table, and I've got a space in it, so I've got to put that space in there. I'll just make that column a little wider so you can see it. So it's number of staff with position ID. What I haven't done yet is turned on the totals button up here, which will allow us to count them. So I click this, and I've now got this totals row that's just been added in. So I'm going to change that there to be a count. So it will now count the number of position IDs, and we'll display them under this new heading, number of staff. But I also want some criteria on that, looking at the question, because the question wants to know the list of positions that have at least 2 staff members. So we need to use our expression symbols here, our math symbols. We can do it in the criteria row. Okay, and we want to say more than, so that's the more than symbol pointing to the right, more than or equal to 2, and that will give us anything in there where the position ID totals 2 or more, and that will give us the result that we want there. We also, there's one little tricky part in here that will work for now. If I run that, there we go. So we can see salesperson has 4, vendor machine operator has 3. That's perfect. However, that could be counting people who have left. And if we look at the staff table, we can see that Peterson left. The others don't have a leaving date. So because there's something here, this means it's present, there's something here. These are all empty, or null if we're talking in database terms. So jump back here. We can put a third criteria in, and we can add the position end date. Just double click it and it'll pop down there. And then we can use basically our validation language, if you like. We can say is null. So that has to be empty for it to count. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly, okay? I also, if we look at the question, it must show the name of the position and number of staff members only. So it doesn't want to see this data in the end result. If I just run it a second and show you, it's going to look a little odd. Okay, so it's just blank. So it's sort of a useless heading in terms of appearance. If we untick that box there, that then makes that a full mark question. So if I run that now, you see the numbers went down by 1. One of those was 4 just now, whichever one that Peterson used to be a part of. Okay, just close that table. There's our results. Let's close this query and save it. Yes, and we're going to call this one QRYA. So I know that's the first query. And then we're on to the second one. So the second one, obviously, always a bit more complicated, usually involves some maths or some creation of new fields, usually a combination of both. It's a big question, so it's asking you to calculate and display lots of things. It's basically trying to get you to calculate staff bonuses. So the bonuses are calculated based on how long they've worked for the company. So if they've worked for at least 3 years, the bonus is £1,000. If it's less than 3 years, the bonus is £200. So we've got to create a query that will work out the bonus for each current staff member. There's an important part there where it says current, so we've got to remember Peterson shouldn't be included in these results. So if we look at the calculated part, so the calculation part means we need to work out the number of years they've worked and the bonus. Now, they're pretty much all going to be quite high for us because this is an older past paper and it's going to calculate this based off the date information on your computer. So ours will be different to what they would want, but it will still work exactly the same way. So we are going to create a new query, just like we always do in Design View. And we are going to add in the staffing table, because that should have all the information we need. Okay, and we're going to add in the staff surname, because that's under the display. We're going to put the start date, because that is also under the display. Now, based on that start date, we can start our calculations. So we can calculate from the start date, okay? So we're going to basically, how many years have they worked there is what we need to work out. So we're going to say years worked, colon. And then we're going to take an integer, which is a number. And we are going to, just bear with me while I just type this in, I will explain it once I've gone through. So square brackets, remember, are calling on existing field names, which close brackets. Okay, so let's just see if that works a second. Yeah, okay, so my new heading there, years worked, is basically counting from this. So they're all going to qualify for the higher bonus based on the years that they've worked. If we look at the query, so this part of the query, we've got a new heading called years worked, which is a number. That's what the integer is, which takes date. So it takes whatever date it is. It looks at your system clock here for the date and takes away the staff start date. So whatever date is in there, because it knows that's a date, and it will divide it by 365. and that will give you how many years they've got in there. The next one now is the bonus, so that's going to be based on the years they've worked. So next to the years they've worked, we have a nice new heading called bonus. It's a new heading, so I've got to put my colon after it. This is going to be an if. Remember, ifs in Access are ifs. Okay. Because you said if we open a regular bracket, and then we take our new heading using square brackets, which is years worked. Remember, type it exactly as it appears. So I didn't have a space and I capitalized the word worked. Just make that wider so you can see. Okay, so if the years worked is more than 3, then, which is a comma, or else, show 1,000. So if it's more than 3, they get 1,000. And if it's not more than 3, so that's an else again, or otherwise, give them 200. Okay, so that's the full one there. That's quite nice and straightforward as far as if statements go. So make a new heading called bonus, which is an if the years worked is more than 3, then give them 1,000, otherwise give them 200. That should calculate for us now. Oh, I've missed something. What have I missed? Closing brackets. Oh, I missed my bracket off the end. Let's run that again. There we go. So they all qualify for 1,000. Now this is not quite a full mark question because although that says 1,000, it doesn't actually say £1,000. So there's a little bit of fine tuning we can do there just to make that perfect. But we are almost there. So what else do we need? Right, so the bonus needs to be calculated for each current staff member with a performance grade of excellent. So let's have a look what that means. So excellent means performance grade ID is 1. So they have to have a 1 for their performance grade. So we can go here. We can. Have I missed off my field there? I believe I have. So it's going to be. Oh, sorry. I need to add my table in, which is that one. I need to add that down there. So performance grade ID. And what are we looking for in there in the criteria? The criteria for that is 1. So that's going to show me all the people who had a 1, which should now change my results quite a bit. Yeah, so there's far fewer of them that are performing really well. And that should be it for the second part. The only bit we've got to do is change this bit here to display as currency. So if we click into it first, bring up the property sheet, and we can change the format up here, which is not displaying very well on my screen. The format up here, we can set that to be currency, so it will display with a pound sign. So I've just changed, make sure it's clicked in there, and I'll run that. There we go, and now it appears as an amount of money, which is perfect. But if I double check my display criteria, it says that it wants the staff surname, the staff start date, the number of years worked, and the bonus. So we've got the surname, start date, years worked, bonus. It doesn't want to see this little search here, so we need to untick that for full marks. There we go. That is query B, and probably the hardest one in the paper. Yes, I want to save. QRYB. Right, okay. This is on to the final part now, which is the report. So we need to start with our query. If we look at what it's asking us, it's very, very simple, the query for this one. But essentially we are looking for the name of the position, the surname of each staff member, the position start, the position end, and the total number of staff, which is the calculation for this one we're going to do in the report, because we need to calculate it for each group as opposed to the entire report. If I wanted a total overall, I could do it here using a count, but I don't. To get the full marks on this one, you need to count it for each position. So if you see something where you've got a count within a grouping, in the report, then that's where you do it in the report, not in the query. Because the query, it's more difficult to distinguish between the groupings in the query than it is in the report. So, going to add our tables in here to the query. We want the staff table, and we want the staff position table. And I think that's all we need for this one. Right, so what do we need? We need the position from, no, we actually need, sorry, the position table as well. So we need all these three. So we need the name of the position, so what is it? Because that's going to be the main grouping for our report. So that's why I'm putting it first. I need the staff surname. I'm basically working through the question bit by bit. We need the position start date. So these are all bullet pointed in the question. I need the position end date. So there it is. And I need well, it doesn't tell me we need the staff reference, but remember, we're going to be counting based on an ID. So we need to be able to count by staff member. So we're going to take the staff reference to make that count a bit easier. And we want to make sure we're not counting anybody who's already left. So we're going to take the staff leave-in date. And the only bit of criteria we're going to put in here is to say that that one is empty by saying is null. So there's our fields. We're going to save this. And we're going to call this query C. There we go. And same as normal, we're going to create our report straight away using the wizard. We're going to take query C as the basis for it. We're going to use all of those fields that we just put in. I'm going to follow the wizard through. Now this is the part where you check to make sure that it is grouped by position. So you can often change the grouping. So if you need to, if your query hasn't quite worked in the exam, then you can change it by, well, lots of different things really. But basically you want to try and get it grouped by whatever the question is asking you. In this case, it's a position. So we're going to just go to this. We don't need to group it any further. We don't need to sort it, I don't believe. No, it doesn't say anything about sorting. I'm going to leave it portrait because there's plenty of space. I'm going to leave everything as normal there. I'm not going to leave it with that name. I'm going to call this RPT C because it's part of activity C. And finish. And there's my very messy, not done yet report. So I'm going to close print preview and take me to this awful thing. Remember, don't expand it to the right at all because it's an A4 sheet of paper. I don't want a page header. I just want all my heading information grouped around each position. So I'm going to have a main header because it's pretty good practice in this sort of case. Just something like that. Hasn't got to be anything fancy. Remember, we're not being assessed on our formatting. As long as it makes sense, that's fine. We're then going to make our position section a bit bigger because we're a bit tight for space. So we're going to make that section a bit bigger. This is just the headings now for the position section. So this is the name of the position. If we look, so that's that bit. This is the section I've just made bigger. So we're going to go back in. We're going to put all our headings in there and all our details in there. I'm going to bring that heading down there. So that's the actual heading. I'm going to make that box a bit smaller. I'm going to make this box a bit smaller. And I'm going to put these next to each other. If we just check what that looks like. So now I've got position, salesperson, and these are all the people who are salespeople. Position manager, that's the one person who's been the manager. So we're starting to take shape. Now I want the surname information down here. And I want to line it up with the surname information underneath. So that everybody's surnames line up. Again, change the view. Okay, could probably do with a bit of formatting to make things a bit easier to see there. So I will make this bold. Just so that it gives it that little bit extra to stand out. I'm then going to grab these, bring these down. So the start date heading. This is the start date here. So I'm just making it a bit wider so we can actually read what's in the box. This will be the same. There we go. I'm rushing trying to line these up. You can obviously take a bit of time doing it yourselves. I'm just doing it quickly because it's not the most exciting thing to watch. I'm going to drag this into the section I want, like so. Make that one wider too. That's my staff reference. That's like my primary key. Now, I don't really need that at the moment. And that one there is the staff leaving date. Now, I also don't need that in there either, so I'm just going to take that one out. Now, the staff reference number, I'm going to leave it there for now. We might be able to get rid of it. We'll try it in a second, see if it breaks it or not. We can get rid of our page header now to give ourselves a bit more space on the overall report. So now we've got each section. So I'm also going to make my position heading stand out a bit there as well, I think. So let's have that one and that one. Let's make them bold. We could probably make them slightly bigger. See if that, there we go. Let's cut a bit of the heading off, so let's just go and fix that. Bring that bit out and make this bit slightly wider. Okay, so we've got they're not lined up, and that one's obviously very cut off, so yeah, I've got a little bit of work to do there. Hopefully that's a bit better. Yeah, so I can see each position and how many people they are. So if we look at the list of bullet points, we've got suitable report title, tick. Have we got the name of the position? Yes, we have. The surname of each staff member? Yes, we do. Have we got the start date? Yes, we do. Do we have the end date? Yes, we do. And do we have the total number of staff? No, we don't. So that's the one thing we've got left to do. So in terms of difficulty of report, you can get most of the marks quite quickly just by arranging things nicely on the page from a very simple query, to be honest. The only bit we're going to do now is do a little total. So I'm in report design here, and what I can do is the totals button in this case is not going to help us. So if I click in there, see it doesn't let me total up that. If I click on the surname there, it's still not going to let me total it up. It might with that one. It will count records, but I think that will, yes, that'll count it. Or it might actually work for us. Let's try that. It has worked. So there we go. We've got a total for each one. I was going to show you how to type it in, but there's actually no need. So I'll just undo what I did just to show you. So that totals button up there when we're in report design will only light up when it can count a certain number of things. So it could count the number of start dates, for example. Now these are headings. Notice it's grayed out. If I click on them, it's staying grey. If I go into the detail, so that's where the number of records are, it will count them for me, which means we definitely don't need staff reference. We can have a bit more space if we need to. If I click on surname in the detail section, totals button lights up, and I can say count the records, so count how many there are in each one. And it's added a new footer, which is a bit wide, but I can quite easily sort that, and it's just giving me a total. Now you're not going to get full marks because it doesn't tell you what that number's for. So we need to go into design view, we need to grab that, pop it over there, and just get a label. Just pop this in here and say total. That should, I mean, it could be more specific, I suppose. And if we line that up with the other one, and we make sure that one there is left aligned. Total staff, total staff, total staff. So there's 1 in there, there's 3 in there, and there's 3 in there. It's also giving me an overall total here of 7. It's adding all of them up for me. See if we can fix that. Oh, sorry, wrong view, design view. Yeah, so I don't want it there. So I can, if I don't want that totaling up, I can just delete that box and bring that back up. So if we change the view one last time, I've now got everything on that bullet pointed list for that question. The only thing left to do is turn it into a PDF, ready for the examiner to mark. So to turn it into a PDF, I might as well show you while we're here. Here we go, file, and oh, sorry, no we don't, let me go back. We're going to go to print preview, and then we're going to click print. Now I don't have a printer here. It says Microsoft print to PDF. You might have to go into the drop down list to change it. Do that. Click OK. It will ask you where you want to save it to. So if I just put it on my desktop, I can then call it so I know what it is. Report C, save, and it's not printing, it's just the process is going through is saving it as a PDF. And that is a finished, complete full marks report. And that is the past paper minus the testing and evaluation. That is the entire past paper. So hopefully, if you take your time going through that, you should be able to complete it as well. Part B to follow soon.